If you're learning Russian and you're still translating in your head while you speak, then you want to watch this video because at some point you got to start thinking in Russian because, well, there's so many reasons. First of all, your Russian is going to sound so much more natural. I remember in the beginning, someone asked me, well, in the beginning of learning Russian, what was my name? I was like, Moje имя это Ari, which is a literal translation, but it's going to sound a little bit weird in Russian because in Russian you actually say, instead of my name is, you say they call me whenever you introduce your name. So this is also why in my course Russian Conversations Unlocked, I take a very natural approach to learning Russian. Another example would be that Russian often uses just different words or less words or more words in order to explain the same thing. For example, if you want to ask in English, what did you say? In Russian, you can say, что сказал? If you're talking to a man, or что сказала, or что ты сказала. Like there's a couple of different ways to say this. So second of all, your Russian is going to be so much faster because if you're translating in your head and someone asks you like, where you're learning Russian, почему ты учишь русский язык? And first you're like, I'm learning Russian because Russian is a beautiful language. Then you're going to be like, я учу русский, because it's a beautiful language, потому что это красивый язык. In order to like half a minute or a minute further, and this is not going to be a lot of fun or engaging to the person you're talking to. And it is very, very, very important that you get positive feedback from the people you're speaking to, because the more positive feedback you get, the better, like the more motivated you will be to continue speaking Russian. I think one of the reasons why my Russian is good because I started speaking from the beginning and I got positive feedback, which then caused a loop, which made me want to learn more, which want to speak more, which then have people give me more compliments. So which made me like, oh, I'm enjoying this. People like it as well, which made me want to learn more, and this just caused a positive feedback loop. And now after 10 years, I'm fluent and doing stand-up in Russian, which is also like I'm doing stand-up because the first time I did it, then people were like, wow, this is really cool. So then I continued doing it. So this is the thing. You want to go for successes in the beginning. And the more you think in Russian, the better you will sound in Russian, which will going to get you more compliments and which will start this positive feedback loop. Now, I get where you're thinking, okay, this is very easy to say, like, all right, just start thinking in Russian, but that's not how it works. You cannot be like from one moment to the other, all right, from now on, I'm going to think in Russian. It doesn't work like that. What I want you to look at it instead is take a different approach. Instead of thinking this is like something binary where you either don't or you do think in Russian. See it as something that in some instances you do it more or less. Even if you're a complete beginner, sometimes you may be thinking in Russian for very small parts of the time. For example, if you learned how to say привет, and it just becomes natural for you to say привет instead of hi. It's like you don't go when you meet someone here and you're like, how do I say hi in Russian? Oh yeah, hi is привет. No, you just internalize that привет is hi. So in the beginning, for example, you might be at 1 out of 100 phrases that you internalize and that you're thinking. Whereas I'm currently at the point where 99 out of 100 phrases I think. And occasionally there's one sentence that is very complicated that I still have to translate in my head before it's like, all right, in Dutch or in English it's like this. So then I'm going to take the words and then kind of see how it would be in Russian. So now the most important question, how do you start thinking in Russian if you cannot just be like, now I'm going to start thinking in Russian? No, I think you need to take specific practices and develop specific skills to get you from, if you're at 1 out of 100 now, within a month you're at 5 or 10 out of 100 instances or phrases you're thinking in Russian. That's progress. That's what I want you to aim for. And there's a couple of activities that you can do to improve this. First of all, the more you speak, the more you'll start thinking in Russian. I notice because sometimes when I'm spending like quite some time with Russian native speakers, afterwards there's this like residual time when I'm just thinking in Russian, and it's a very weird feeling as a non-native speaker. But you can also get this in shorter periods of time. So the more you speak, and you can do this with tutors, you can do this with with friends, family that you know, or just with strangers you might meet on your day-to-day, or with a specific course that practices speaking, like Russian Conversations Unlocked, my course, for example. Or you can just record yourself or trying to like talk to yourself in Russian. All these things work. So the second thing that you can do if speaking is still kind of difficult, then you can write more in Russian, because writing is basically speaking, except you do it by hand, and it is a slower version of the same thing, because speaking and writing, you're both using the words and grammar that you know in order to create sentences. Either you use them by mouth or you write them down. And I just realized that one of the reasons why also my speaking is pretty good and why I'm thinking in Russian is because In the beginning, and still I'm texting. I was texting a lot, so texting is writing, and that really helped me to use the things that I was learning and put them into a sentence, which then allowed my brain to really develop that skill of starting to think in Russian. So with writing, you can, for example, at the end of the day, or write like 20 to 50 words of something you did in Russian. Just try it like that. Or if you have a pen pal or someone you can be texting with, you can do that. I think you can even do this with AI if you want to. Why not? Why not? Maybe it works for you. You can always try it. So speaking and writing are very important to develop that thinking skill. Now, the next thing that you also want to do on a consistent basis is to be listening to correctly spoken Russian. You can listen to songs. You can watch movies and series. You can have conversations with native speakers. That also works. Because let's take the example of music. Because music, I think, is kind of underrated. Because if there's one song you really enjoy, then you can listen to it like 100 times. Or even more, or less, doesn't really matter. And there's going to be specific phrases and that just going to stick out. And you're going to be like, oh, what does that mean? And then you listen to it over and over and over again, and it just gets internalized. Like, if you hear 100 times, "Я люблю тебя," then at a certain point it's going to be so natural for you to think that you're not even thinking like, all right, so in English, like you say, I love you. So then in Russian, it's going to be, я люблю you тебя. No, it's just going to be like, you heard it so many times. It's going to be one of the phrases that you just like, you just ruffle it off. Or for example, when someone is asking like, why are you learning Russian? You can be like, я люблю русский язык, simply because you heard русский язык and я люблю тебя. Like all these different instances of these phrases so many times you practice them. It's going to be like so natural to say, я люблю русский язык. I love the Russian language. Series are also a great way because you listen to natural conversations at the comfort of your own home. And if you're a beginner, you can just turn on English subtitles. The main thing here is to allow your brain and your ears, your subconscious, to take in as many words and phrases that you hear. And if you hear like "мне нравится" 100 times, at some point you'll just say like "мне нравится" without issue. And you also want to start reading in Russian, because reading is like listening, except for the fact that you can do it at your own pace. Unfortunately, this is going to be a little bit more difficult, but you can try dual language books, simpler books, or adapted books, or simple news articles, something like that, to find something that's like at your level or a little bit above. And if you do all these things, you're going to notice that you're going to start thinking in Russian at more and more instances. And we want to aim for progress, not for perfection. If you want my full system, how I learn Russian and how you can do the same, then watch this video next.